Good evening, wrestling fans. You are watching the Two Bros Wrestling Show. Thank you for tuning in. I am Kevin. We are on the road to WrestleMania, and tonight we are talking Elimination Chamber. Last night's Chamber was a bit of a mixed bag. We're going to get, though, into all of it, including how I did on my predictions, as well as what the implications are for WrestleMania. Where are we headed? What are the storylines? What do we like? What do we don't? There's even later on before our main event, going to have a bit of a surprise for you, but don't want to spoil that. Before we get into any of that, though, we do have some news to hit with our opening bell segment. We're starting tonight with the swerve of all swerves, and that is Netflix will not be acquiring Warner Brothers Discovery. Paramount, who was left for dead at one point in this whole acquisition race, swooped in, made an offer so ridiculous that Netflix chose to bow out rather than re-up with a new offer. They basically said that Warner Brothers Discovery was a nice to have at the right price, but for them, not a must have at any price. Obviously, this story is the biggest in all of entertainment, but it does have wrestling implications for certain. When it seemed like Netflix was going to make this acquisition, some were worried that Netflix would prioritize their relationship and ties to WWE and that AEW, who partners with Warner Brothers Discovery, would be left out. But it was never quite that simple. Netflix was only proposing to buy parts of Warner Brothers Discovery, specifically the production studios and the streaming platforms. The broadcast networks that AEW airs upon, like TBS and TNT, would not have been part of the Netflix deal. So, yes, very likely AEW would have had to lose their streaming partner because Warner Brothers Discovery owns HBO Max. However, they probably would have been fine on television, keeping their broadcast deals in place until the end of that contract. So maybe it was not going to be the end of the world had it been Netflix, but people sometimes tend to forget that the Netflix deal was not going to directly impact the broadcast homes of AEW. Now, you may be thinking, well, what about Paramount? Now that that's the way we're going, Tony Khan must be breathing a sigh of relief. Let's get into that because there's so much we don't know about this deal yet, including whether or not regulators will let it happen. But what we do know is that AEW will be able to keep all of their content, their streaming rights, and their TV rights, at least at the start, in the same house. So, on its face, absolutely, that's a good thing that they don't have to break up those two things. Warner Brothers Discovery even owns a bit of AEW, so that also probably means that Tony can breathe a slight sigh of relief. However, it is very important to remember with all of this that the unheard sum of money that Warner Brothers Discovery is taking from Paramount includes a boatload of debt that Paramount is willing to take on as part of its commitment to make this deal happen. One of the reasons Netflix walked away is the crippling amount of debt that Paramount is undertaking. So, what happens when a company who is taking on a lot of debt, taking on a lot of new acquisitions? What do they start to do? Well, they start to shed dollars as fast as they possibly can. And that means once this deal is happening, whether or not the regulators let it happen, one of the first things you can expect are cuts, major cuts. And one does not have to look too very far back in wrestling history to remember when a successful wrestling company that had pretty decent ratings was killed by acquisition of a large company. AOL bought Warner Brothers years ago and basically decided they did not want to be in the wrestling business and got rid of WCW. So, what would Paramount think of wrestling? It's cheap to produce, but it's not even a small slice of this pie. It's a crumb and barely a crumb, and not necessarily most profitable. Will it be worth them? Do they even care? The attitude that they will have on professional wrestling and AEW in particular is going to decide Tony Khan's fate in this one. Stay tuned. This one is going to be a wild ride. And speaking of staying tuned, I promised you a surprise before we got to our main event. And here we go.
Hey, what is happening?
You remember this guy that actually made, I've been hoping for much of this year that people didn't do the math and not realize that Two Bros wrestling show was only containing one bro.
One bro. Two bros. This bro is back, baby.
Doug, welcome back, my friend.
What is happening? What is happening?
We have missed you and are happy that you have joined us again. I've been very discreet and not letting folks know what had been going on. But I guess now we should just say we're thankful that Doug is okay and that he has been joyriding on weekends with Vince McMahon, and it could have turned out really poorly.
So much worse than it actually turned out. So, I mean, it's all things considered, it was the best possible conclusion. It was the best of the worst options. So, but now I'm back.
Well, welcome back, Doug. We were just talking the Time Warner swerve that
right
put,
out of nowhere,
Netflix just out of nowhere. It was a storyline written perfectly for wrestling, and what it means for wrestling is I was telling the folks at home, we just are going to have to wait on that one.
I caught the tail end of that there. I really think that live television is like a premium thing right now, so maybe the Paramount folks look at that. I don't know how much revenue that AEW can actually bring Paramount in all this, but it is live television. Like you say, it's cheap to make. So maybe that's the saving grace. Of course, Tony's family and Tony are incredibly rich. So I think Tony will be in the wrestling business as long as he's in the wrestling business,
That's true. And it might be somewhere else. Sure, we're looking at the biggest disruption in any of our lifetimes when it comes to media of all types, production and broadcast and streaming. This is going to be one to watch.
Yes, absolutely.
Moving on to our next story, just some sad news, at least for one wrestling fan, that fan being me, as Shawn Michaels announced this week that NXT's Stand and Deliver PLE will not be taking place this year during WrestleMania weekend. When I say I'm disappointed, it's because I'm going to be in Vegas this year, and I had really hoped to catch NXT's biggest annual event. But instead of Mania weekend, Stand and Deliver will take place April 4th in St. Louis, Missouri instead. The change was supposedly made because of scheduling issues with having to do NXT so early in the morning, especially when it's Pacific time, then trying to have enough time to get folks over to Allegiant Stadium for the first night of Mania. Which leads me to our next story. Speaking of that, likely one of the reasons because they wanted to move NXT is that WWE is moving up the time of WrestleMania. It will now start at 3 p.m. Vegas time, Eastern time, on both days. And further, WWE revealed this week that the first hour of both nights will air for free on ESPN2 and ESPN, respectively, between Saturday and Sunday. My guess, Doug, I don't know what you think about this, but I'm going to think that if they're moving it forward and then adding, that's maybe the word, adding. I don't believe that this is really going to be more the main card that was probably already planned. I think this could probably be looked at as an additional hour they're tacking on to the beginning. That's sort of the pre-show, but we're putting it on ESPN in order to try to drive, ESPN limited subscriptions.
Yeah, because it sounds like right now, I think you're the only person who actually has tickets to the live event, the way they're scrambling to try and move tickets. So it sounded rough for WrestleMania this year, man. I don't know what's up with that.
We addressed this on the show last week, is that they were about 10,000 seats behind where they were at this point last year, but they still have almost 2.5 months to sell tickets, and they've already moved something like 40-some thousand tickets for each night. So the idea that this is going to look empty or be a bust is, I think, a bit of an exaggerated. While it is a bit of an exaggeration, it's not going to look empty. It's not going to be like crickets. they are concerned enough that they are doing things like this, and they're messing
Hmm.
around with we don't even have a card really to judge. It's only within the last week we've had more than one match known,
Right.
and so people aren't judging this on the card. As I mentioned last week, Doug, I think a lot of this is a confluence of expensive tickets, people
Yes.
not traveling to this country. Vegas tourism
Hmm.
is down like big time with international tourists. It was down like 27% amongst Canadians, who obviously have the easiest path to get to a WrestleMania here in the United States.
Hmm.
So I think there's a lot of things working against them that they're not going to, that no amount of card rigging is going to be able to fix.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree with that for sure.
WWE is reportedly planning to bring AAA to Texas. The reports are that the show is going to take place a week before WrestleMania. Though it's important with this particular rumor is that there is already a AAA show on the books for Mexico City that weekend.
Oh,
So we either are going to be doing a split card with the roster, or we can expect some announced changes at some point soon. Moving away from Mania news and promotion news to just the poor snake bit Vision faction. Um, First, Seth Rollins went down with an injury, forcing WWE to split him from the group when and storyline turned too quickly. Then Braun Breaker suffered a hernia flipping over an announce table. And then this week, it's Bronson Reed's turn. Bronson got injured trying to break up a pin on Raw this week in that three-way match where he was supposed to be the winner. That was my prediction, by the
hmm.
way. I had on last week's show, I said that final spot is going to Bronson, and I just want to point out that I was not wrong in my prediction. I just did not predict the injury. But yeah, apparently, he dove, he tore his bicep, he immediately had to have surgery. They say a torn bicep is usually 3 to 6 months at least recovery time. So no matter how that rehab or that math works there, um, we don't have Bronson Reed for Mania.
We have what, one member of the Vision like standing right now.
But put Logan Paul and Austin Theory in bubble wrap. I think we're down to
Right.
two. But continuing with injury news, the rough week for injuries on Dynamite this week. The finish of the World Tag match was changed on the fly, just like Raw had to do. That's why Jey Uso won. He and Americano had to figure it out on the fly. Well, the ladies on AEW did too. Penelope Ford was injured doing an Asa moonsault on the Willow Nightingale, and Harley Cameron. An audible was then called. That's what led to that DQ finish. Ford only returned in January after 3 months off with a UCL tear. The good news is, though, that this time appears like she may have dodged a bullet. Reportedly, she has just sprained her ankle as opposed
Oh,
to
good.
breaking it, which was a fear at first, the way she
Hmm.
was holding it. So hopefully that means she will be back soon.
That's good.
So Tony Khan has a very specific view of what Ring of Honor's value is when it comes to a TV package. We learned this through an interesting story that was actually the story didn't really have to do with the TV package. It just sort of came out as part of another story, but it was an interesting tidbit. Is that we found out that maybe Tony Khan should have accepted a deal from Warner Brothers Discovery because they offered him one to put Ring of Honor on True TV on Friday nights at 10 p.m. and he turned down a cable TV slot for Ring of Honor. Had you heard that one?
This one I've not heard. What's the reasoning there?
It didn't line up with what he felt that ROH was worth. So if you
Hmm.
remember 2 years ago, because this was a story apparently from back in 2024, when they started to air Dynamite on True TV on repeats, like they get
Hmm.
the Wednesday night show and then a replay would
Right.
air. So apparently that was the slot that was originally offered to Tony to put ROH on, and instead he chose to run replays of Dynamite in that slot because he didn't want to undersell what he thought Ring of Honor was worth.
Hmm. Hmm.
So that should give you an indication of maybe what he's looking for Ring of Honor's future. And because of that, the Honor Club subscription model is going to be standing for the time being. He's that committed to Ring of Honor. I'm not so sure he shouldn't have accepted a deal just to get them on television.
Right.
just to get more eyes on the product, but he apparently is waiting for the right deal. And especially now, as we talked at the start of our show, with this new, very, very compressed media landscape, he may have missed the boat on a deal for Ring of Honor. He is still committed to it, though. The TV tapings themselves are going to be returning to become a studio show. They have been doing a lot of tapings before and after Collision and Dynamite of matches, and then cobbling that together. I kind of like the studio show, Doug. It
Me
reminds
too.
us,
It's kind of old school. Yeah,
yeah,
that's what I
it's
was
like
thinking.
stuff. It looks better, I think, to have 50 people that are showed up to watch Ring of Honor as opposed to have a couple thousand people sitting on their hands because they're waiting for AEW to start.
Right. Yeah.
So I like that idea. And apparently they just had the first round of tapings, and those will start airing on future Honor Clubs.
Cool.
So much like they're doing for Mania in Vegas, WWE has announced there's going to be a blackout there was a blackout in Chicago for Elimination Chamber. I don't know if you've heard about this, Doug, when you were talking about like the ticket thing. So apparently businesses and bars, whether it's a restaurant, a bar, if you're having these watch parties, Vegas apparently last year for Mania had tons of watch parties at the casinos. WWE says no more. If you're in town, you're coming to the show if you want to see it. They have issued a 50-mile blackout, and apparently they used that last night in Chicago as well. Not making a lot of friends. As you might imagine, just 50-some days out, there were a lot of casinos who had already advertised and planned for watch parties that now are not taking place. Part of what got WWE there to begin with is the business partnership with the tourism industry there in Las Vegas, who probably aren't so happy with this recent move.
TKO just making friends all over the place.
Everywhere they go, my friend.
Yep.
Finally, to end our opening bell, congratulations to the phenomenal AJ Styles. As everyone saw this week, the recently retired Styles was celebrated on Raw, and then was surprised by The Undertaker, who made an appearance to let Styles know that he was the latest inductee into this year's class of the WWE Hall of Fame. Well deserved. And Doug and I, every year we have a show closer to Mania where we go deeper into all of the inductees into the Hall of Fame. But I think that, Doug, I can speak for the two of us to say we're probably going to be supportive of this one.
Yes. Yeah, although I think it's odd that Undertaker is like the harbinger of Hall of Fame inductees now. If Undertaker shows up, unexpectedly, you're going to get inducted. It's kind of the way this goes now, isn't it?
You're either getting inducted or you're wearing a lucha mask and he's telling you what to do on AAA. One of those two things.
One of the two, yeah.
That's what Undertaker does nowadays. And with that, we are moving on to the review of last night's Elimination Chamber. Doug, you weren't able to make our preview, so you can pretend as if you had all the answers and all your predictions were right, because we don't know what yours are. I will say I actually went 3 for 4, so I didn't do bad.
I have been removed from a lot of wrestling recently and a lot of other things, so I will be the honest Alice and say, if that's a thing, I don't know. Honest Alice just sounded like the thing to say there.
We'll say it, yeah. Honest Alice.
If the show fits, wear it like a hat, I guess. But anyway, I had no predictions going in, although I was able to actually catch. What was this we watched yesterday? Road to WrestleMania or Elimination Chamber?
Was the road.
Yes,
it was the road to WrestleMania, but Elimination Chamber. I will say before we get into the spoilers, where we talk winners and losers, absolutely, I would say you have to watch because there's some storyline developments. It is the last stop on the road to WrestleMania. It sets the stage, and there were some good things to recommend. Overall, though, I thought for your go-home show, as it were, to be going into Mania, it's a bit of a mixed bag for me.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I don't even know. I think usually we're pretty lockstep with this, but I don't know if I call it a must watch. I think you can catch your highlights on any highlight show, or maybe even on like the WWE website and get caught up real quick. But I mean, maybe it's because I've been removed for a minute. So, but we'll
Let,
see. Let's talk about it.
let's talk about it, as Trick Willie would say. We're going to start with how the show starts. The women's elimination chamber. You had Raquel versus Alexa versus Rhea versus Asuka versus Kiana, and then of course Tiffany Stratton. It was Stratton and James to start. And I think the first spot that really grabbed me as being unique is when Tiffany tried to do her back spring, her back flip handspring elbow and missed and hit the pod. I don't think I'd seen that before. That
Hmm.
was cool. When Rhea entered, though, she cleared house, but it was obvious as soon as Rhea entered who the fans wanted in this one.
Right. Yeah.
She has a presence about her that just hits different. And I mean, I'd say that whether any part of the roster, male or female, Rhea is fans treat her like she's one of the bigger stars in all of WWE. It's
Yes,
obvious.
yes, they absolutely do. I got to say, the best spot for me was the spot that always annoys me when there's the rest of the competitors get on the big guy, or in this case, the big gal in the ring.
Uh,
Which this could have went to Rhea, or what do they call her now? Big Mommy Cool, which I kind of
Mommy
like.
cool. Yeah, I do too.
Where's Raquel, busts out, and all the other combatants go flying in every direction. First time I've ever seen that move where it did not annoy me. So
That's a win right there because that one always the Andre the
always,
Giant spot always annoys Doug.
yes, always,
Um,
always.
I also liked it when Little Miss Bliss was the first one of the night to come off the pod doing that cool flip of hers onto the gathered participants who were there,
Hmm.
making sure she didn't hit the steel. But I was a bit surprised that Alexa was the first one who
Yes.
was eliminated, and she was before even all the participants were even in the ring, which was
Hmm.
surprising because Raquel had not yet come into play. And I guess we should point out that it was Big Mommy Cool who was the final participant because from a storyline perspective, that's the advantage. That's what you want to be the last one
Hmm.
in to be fresh. And did think they put her over kind of big in this,
Oh
considering
yeah, they definitely did.
yeah, she
Definitely.
she she had that spot. She had all those spots where she comes in and then just starts manhandling everybody.
I think, yeah, overall the entire night did really good about putting somebody over who didn't necessarily or wasn't necessarily going to win, but they
Yeah.
did a really good job of putting folks over.
And that's what these matches are about, just like with a Royal Rumble situation where there's only going to be one winner. You know that most of the field are not conceivable winners, but it doesn't mean that they don't win the night by being put
Hmm.
over in the way that a Raquel did. Um, and I'd say the same for Kiana James, who was a surprising person just to be in there. I
Yeah.
did think that the crowd really came to life when Raquel put James through a pod during a power slam, which was one of the better spots of this match, and then immediately power bombed Asuka on top of James, and then eliminated
Hmm.
both of them. That was a very
Yes.
cool spot.
Yes, it was very tribal chief ish.
Very. What'd you think of Rhea's cannonball off the
You know,
off the pod?
yeah, I love Rhea. I mean, she scares my son, but I love Rhea.
I mean, not only did she do the cannonball off the pod, she managed to clear Tiffany Stratton, who was sitting on the top rope, clear the turnbuckle, the
Hmm.
ring post to come off onto what ended up being the end there, because Tiffany does the moonsault, and so then it ends up being just down to Tiffany and Rhea once Raquel was taken out there. And either of those ladies would have been believable. So I like that they were the last two because you
Hmm.
could certainly see either of them being the end Mania opponents for Jade. But don't you think in some ways that the way they went was kind of where I think everybody kind of
Yes.
knew that that's where we had to go with it. Just look at the poster of the two of
Yeah,
them together. That's
absolutely.
Mania.
It is absolutely.
Predictable winner, but the right winner in my mind. And I will say, I know I mentioned up top, mixed on this whole pay per view as a whole, but I thought this was a good chamber match to start the evening. Rhea is absolutely the right choice, one of the most over members of the roster, as I said. The biggest question for me now when it comes to Mania is another big name in the women's division. Rhea going solo here, having dropped the tag titles the night before. Where does this lead Io Sky
Yes.
going to Mania? She might be the odd person out, I'm afraid.
I was wondering about that too. What happens to poor Io now?
Maybe something with Asuka. Maybe she, finally comes to end this with the Kabuki Warriors. I don't know, but definitely a odd person out situation, unfortunately, for one of the best in-ring performers, male or female, on the
Hmm.
roster in Io Sky. We still have, a month and a half, but we need her on the card doing something of significance.
Yes.
Sandwiched between the Elimination Chamber matches were the two title matches. We had Intercontinental title of Becky Lynch taking on um, hometown favorite, or new hometown, I guess not from there
Yeah.
originally, but still
Adopted
adopted
hometown. Yeah.
hometown, as they say, AJ Lee. I know AJ is in her adopted hometown, therefore she is the fan favorite, but I still like tradition. So right from the start, Becky shouldn't have been the first one out. She's the champion.
Hmm.
Old
Agreed.
man, old
I
man's.
don't. I don't. I did not like that. I was like, why is Becky
Why?
out first?
But
Why?
I'm
Yeah.
I'm glad they at least got the order right during introductions, but still, just from the
Hmm.
get go, you didn't have to do it that way. There was nothing special about AJ's entrance other than you just wanted to save her pop for last. But
Yep.
again, old men yelling at clouds. We're traditionalists for sure. The announcers did a good job in this one, I thought, because they continually made a big deal about the fact that this was AJ's first singles match in more than a decade. That's exactly
Hmm.
what they should have been doing. Rust was part of the storyline here. Um, but I don't know that it also wasn't a bit of a cover in case there really was rust and or nervousness. And I don't know. There was part of me that felt like AJ did seem a little tentative and a little nervous at start, especially.
I think so too. And again, I think that's natural because like they were heavily putting over first, real singles match in what 11 years at this point.
11 years, yeah. And they wrestled a deliberate pace to start. Um,
Hmm.
and part of that was to let have some time to show AJ still had some technical skills doing some mat wrestling, and it was the story of Rust of 11 years against an overly confident Becky Lynch who thought she could just quickly put AJ away, and being frustrated when that didn't happen. Um, you did get a ref bump that led to a visual
Yeah.
tap that didn't count, that it incited the crowd at first. Um, that got a "you tapped out" chant started, which did bring the crowd back into it a little bit. That was a subplot of this match, honestly, was the referee, because Jessica Carr has a history with Becky, and
Hmm.
I'm sure that's going to play into the aftermath of this one, because the ending comes when Becky hit the exposed turnbuckle and then tapped out to a Black Widow. New champ AJ Lee, which could be interesting. I think that I don't mind the switch. I predicted that this would probably be the chance to do anything um, surprising maybe on this card. So I kind of thought that this would be the direction they go. The match itself, though, there wasn't a ton to it, but
There really wasn't. It
there
was
wasn't.
almost like a TV match. You know, it was. Yeah, I think there was more story in the match with like you said with Jessica Carr and AJ maybe being like shoot rusty. I'm not
Yeah,
sure.
or shoot nervous.
About yeah, absolutely. And just I don't know. There's just something about it that just didn't hit like it should have, and I think a lot of that just throughout the night. And maybe I'm off with this, but I, if I am, I am. I'm sure you'll call me on it. But the crowd did not seem like a traditional Chicago crowd. There was not a
100%.
lot. There was not that energy there. That crowd seemed dead all night, even for their hometown favorites. They just weren't.
It was not the rambunctious crowd that Chicago is typically known for. And I do think it in particular hurt the two middle matches that had
Hmm.
the hometown favorites in them. Maybe because they
Hmm.
predicted what the outcome would be, that the drama wasn't there for the fans. But the fans could have probably brought this up if it had been a louder crowd to make it feel
Hmm.
more as it
Right.
was. it was there. It was fine. I do think, though, that it sets up a rematch easily
Hmm.
for Mania. And I truly believe that that match will be better than this one because, one, AJ's going to have more time to prepare for it. They've got this one out of the way. They'll be placed more prominently instead of the cool down match after a really
Yep.
good women's chamber. So I think that there's a lot more going for the next time these two meet than this one. And I think they both probably will agree and therefore be more motivated to make sure that the next
Hmm.
one is better than this one.
Yeah, because I mean, both these talents. I mean, AJ ring rust aside, both these talents are great in ring performers. So
Yeah.
it just wasn't clicking though.
There was definitely nothing, I guess I should say, there was nothing though about AJ's performance that made me fear that she shouldn't have come back.
Oh
Like
no, no,
yeah, she wasn't that rusty at all. I just think that something wasn't clicking, and I believe that the skills were still evident enough that given more reps, it'll get even better.
Yes, yeah, because it's all about the reps. It's always about the reps.
Which leads us to our next match, which is the world title being defended CM Punk versus Finn Balor. I really thought it was cool that they did the Chicago special Punk entrance, paying homage to the classic Chicago Bulls
Hmm.
entrance prior to the standard living color music starting. That was a cool way to get the crowd in the United Center
Yep.
motivated. I was shocked by that graphic when he came out, saying that it was Punk's first match in singles match in Chicago in 13 years.
Uh huh.
Michael Cole would clarify that it was his first WWE match in that time, but still, it feels like he's been back long enough that that should have already happened, but apparently had not.
Yep.
Um, a bit too methodical a start to this one as well, I thought, but obviously they were trying to pace themselves. Punk did begin to rally the crowd back into things, especially when he hit that King's elbow from the top rope. They were playing up the injury angle, though, of Punk's side and then legit blood coming from his mouth. The go to
Yeah.
sleep excited the crowd as well. And then, of course, Finn falls to the outside, meaning that, frustration. I thought, though, to me, the best part of this match was the cool visual of the counter of the coup de grace into that sharpshooter. That was so
Hmm.
seamless and undoubtedly the spot of this match. That
You,
looked
you
great.
know, I was thinking, regardless of what I think of Punk, the person at this point, yeah, that was damn cool. I was like,
That was
I've got to give it to him. That was so cool.
that was so cool. And it was the highlight of the match because I thought then very shortly after that we get the finish after a go to sleep after Finn couldn't get a pin when he hit his finisher.
Hmm.
And I thought it's something about that just the ending was never in doubt, so it kind of felt anticlimactic in some ways. I wish they would have ended after the cool sharpshooter spot or something, but
Yes.
it was a fine match. But I would say it was shy of most people's expectations. I think the match they had in Belfast was
Hmm.
better.
Yeah.
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 Before we get to the main event, though, then Doug, let me ask you this: does it give you pause seeing this match when you have someone the quality of Finn Balor in the ring? Does it give you pause as to the possible quality of a Punk Reigns encounter at this stage of both men's careers, especially after the terrible way that Mania ended last year when Cody and Cena kind of ended the whole weekend on a sour note with a turd in a punch bowl kind of match?
You know, I'm afraid Punk's going to get hurt. I was really afraid more than anything that Punk would get hurt because he seemed to be made of glass there for the longest time once he returned to wrestling. Um, so I'm not sure what kind of quality match we're going to get out of Punk Reigns or if we're going to be able to ride on it being Punk Reigns. But one would think we could ride with, Punk or Cody and Cena too, it just being Cody and Cena. So,
Yeah, I know I'm just a tad bit concerned. I've never been concerned with Punk's in-ring work, and this was not bad by any means, but I just think that if Finn Balor's the right kind of guy to bring out what's left in CM Punk's tank, is Roman Reigns that guy? And if this was just middle of the road, will I know WWE is determined not to have a repeat of the way Mania ended for them last time around, but this
mhm.
match gave me a bit of pause. when it comes to what that could look like here in a month and a half.
Although I'm curious to what's next for Finn Balor, unless he's going full on against the entire like House of Purple at this point, which seems to be the way
Yeah.
that's going, especially
And
with
I like it. The whole handshake
the
at the end,
yes, yeah, yeah. You're the better
showing
man
your
tonight.
respect.
Hmm.
And I mean, yes, it's with the whole House of Purple, but if you're talking about what happens at Mania, I'm thinking for Finn Balor, it's Finn Balor versus Dominic Mysterio, and I am there for that one. That I am co-signing on right now. Is I like that direction.
And I would love to see the Demon at Mania too.
That would even take it. Maybe the Diablo. I don't know if he's going for
Oh,
the
oh yeah, maybe Diablo
maybe
at that
for
point.
go for the Mega
Yes,
Championship. Yeah, I
that
do
would
think
be
that
great.
this is about as high profile a match as at this stage as you could have for a Dominic, especially
Hmm.
where they've been teasing this tension for so long. I
Yep,
think this is obviously the perfect time and Mania the perfect stage on which to do it. So that part
yep.
actually excites me that Finn is going to walk away from this having been elevated by CM Punk over the course of the feud, even though no one thought that he was going to disrupt the already planned main event.
But they did such a good job of putting him over in this match, though. Such a good
Yes,
job of that.
yes. The announce crew, it should be said, was on their game all night. I thought that Cole and Wade were just fantastic through all of
Hmm.
this, um, including, I guess, this next part. Before we get to the main event, we should also talk about the reveal of the gobbledygooker. No,
It wasn't that bad.
well,
Yeah,
the whole
and the
box and opening
crowd.
it at a pay per view and all of that stuff. It had the
Yeah,
gobbledygooker vibes.
it totally had gobbledygooker vibes, but it was not the place to debut him. I get it. It's Chicago. It's his hometown too. Where's that love for him? Where he did not get that love, but
No, he did not. So, do you think that's okay? So, for those who didn't watch, Danhausen is who we're talking about, and for those who are watching and going, "Who's
who?
Danhausen?"
You're right.
That's maybe the problem. I like him. Doug likes him. His gimmick can work under right circumstances, but is he a fit for WWE? I think the crowd response says at this point WWE didn't do itself any favors by just assuming that wrestling fans are going to know who Danhausen is,
But
or what
it's
that gimmick is about. When was the last time he was even on AEW? He hasn't been on TV regularly in a couple of
man,
years.
it's just like Royce Keys with Powerhouse Hobbs when they flashed that up at in Riyadh. It's like Powerhouse Hobbs. Okay, maybe about 20%. Let's say 20%, maybe more of the WWE fans are also AEW watchers. They know who Powerhouse Hobbs is,
Yeah,
but nobody else does. Just like how many people? Okay, Chicago should know. People in that
Chicago should
arena
know.
should have known. But yeah, again, let's say that 20. Yeah, let's be generous and say 30% of people know who Danhausen is. I myself enjoyed it. I can't wait to see the iguana and Danhausen interact. I can't wait for that.
Do you think, though, that another way they could have saved it is that, at the very least, what makes Danhausen special and funny is his mic work? Maybe
Yes,
gave him
let
a
him talk.
moment or two to show the crowd what the gimmick is for those who don't know, say the funny lines to get the reaction for those who don't know. Just having him come out and say nothing and have dancers and then just hand the teeth to If you were sitting in the crowd and you didn't know, you probably would wonder exactly what Cole was wondering is what the heck was
What the
that,
hell was
right?
that? Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, not total botch, obviously not the gobbledygooker, but they certainly did not get off on the right foot with Danhausen. Let's see if they can course correct.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm not going to say it wasn't a botch, but it was not gobbledygooker level
No,
botch.
because at least we know those who know that Danhausen is an actual thing who will one day get in the ring and get on the mic. That's not the gobbledygooker who we're still trying to figure out what the point of that was.
Right.
Um, which brings us to our main event, the men's chamber match, where we have Cody Rhodes, Trick Williams, LA Knight, Logan Paul, taking that Vision spot. Randy Orton and Javon Evans. We have Cody and Javon to start. Trick being the first man out of the pods. Evans getting bouncy, getting the crowd reaction, looking like a star.
Yep.
Crowds are starting to get a little restless with Cody. Have you noticed
Mm.
this?
It happens with Cody, man. People get tired of Cody.
Do you
I
think
mean, they
it's that
just,
might be a sign that they got to do a heel turn on him sooner rather than later?
God, I hope so. I want to see Homelander Cody. I mean, he already dresses like him.
I mean,
I,
he
wa-
already
how long
cheated
have,
Sami Zayn out of his shot a
right?
couple weeks ago. I mean, he's doing some heelish things on the low key, right?
Right. I mean, how long have I wanted heel Cody? I've wanted
From the
heel
time
Cody
he
since
showed up.
since before Cody left
Yeah.
AEW. I'm saying, he has that perfect like DC Batman villain quality where he's the bad guy, but he doesn't know he's the
He
bad guy.
doesn't know.
He's like Thanos. He could totally do that. He's
Except when he
doing
was in AEW, he really didn't know it.
yeah, right. He still thought he was a baby face. But
I think just by the fact that he was being opportunistic with Sammy and certain other little hints they're dropping, I think he realizes it now. I think he's, not the executive. He doesn't have to worry about that part of it. I think he's going along with this, and I would not be surprised if we'll get into more of Cody's path here, but I do think that we're headed that direction, and it may be sooner rather than later. I don't know that they
and,
even wait till after Mania.
and not to get ahead of myself, but I think Cody learned a valuable lesson that could push him in that direction by the end of,
Yep.
yeah, that's where you're going to? Okay.
Let's get
Yeah.
on to it.
Yeah, let's
When
let's
Paul
get
comes
in.
in, everyone teams up against him. That gets a good reaction because Paul
Hmm.
is the only true heel in this match. I know Trick
Yes.
Williams is technically a heel, but
He's
again,
not for
back to the
long.
Cody
Yeah.
thing. Cody and Trick are in the middle of the ring, and they're chanting "Whoop that Trick." They weren't
Uh-huh.
chanting for Cody.
Nope.
That man is over.
Yep.
The launching of Paul off the top of the pod was a very sweet looking spot. And then
Yes.
Orton, the last to enter, has that storyline advantage. Here's where I started to think that, wait a minute, what's happening here? So Javon being the first eliminated, I get it. He's young still.
Hmm.
He's got his time.
Right.
But I said last week in my predictions, Javon Evans has no shot at this, but because he's Javon Evans, they're going to elevate him in this match using the complexity of this structure to have him do some things that no one else could ever possibly do. And
Uh-huh.
it really didn't do anything. I mean, yes, he had some of his cool moves that people have seen, but they didn't really do that much interesting with the chamber with Javon. I half expected he was going to be coming off the top. He would be doing
Right.
more than what he did. I felt like that was a bit of a wasted opportunity
I
considering his
agree.
athleticism.
They could have done more with him, but I, I think they still did good. And it goes back to what I was saying. Throughout the night, people were put over without, uh getting the win.
Do you
Uh,
think though that maybe they were legitimately worried with the spat of injuries they've had to have him do too many dangerous spots because they need bodies standing by the time WrestleMania gets around?
what Michael Cole say, 47 sleeps or something like that left till
Yeah,
WrestleMania. But how many injuries can we get in 47 sleeps?
too many, and especially if you're taking
Hmm.
risks. So that could have factored into why they thought
That's
that they
fair.
had him do just enough because you don't want a
Hmm.
21-year-old kid who's got so much ahead of him, maybe missing out on a spotlight on the Mania card. To
Hmm.
wit, I mean, as you can see, well, how things can happen. L.A. Knight legitimately slips on his
Yes.
signature elbow drop, and that made a very awkward elimination for him moments later by Paul because that whole thing kind of didn't go the way it was supposed to.
Hmm.
One of those storylines of the match, though, was Logan Paul getting the heat by eliminating folks. And at first, I started to worry, like, are they really going to, like, maybe like go this route with Logan Paul? You said it. You had some guys that were winners without winning, and Logan Paul
Hmm.
was made to look strong by taking guys out, or at least look opportunistic. And
Yes.
this is though when we start getting into storyline taking over what is match quality, right? The
Hmm.
second time in 2 nights, we get the decoy mask man um, to torment the Vision before another mask man enters the chamber and gets Logan Paul eliminated. That mask man, of course, is revealed to be a returning Seth Rollins, which everyone knew, but it was still well done. I thought, well, everyone knew, maybe except for Paul Heyman, based on the look on his
Poor
face.
Paul, always the last to know.
Always the last. He needs to show up for the production meetings, man.
He really
Uh,
does.
it did make it obvious, though, why they had to shoehorn Paul into this match to get that Seth reveal, because Bronson was
Hmm.
supposed to win it and then gets hurt, so he didn't get to take that spot in the chamber. So
So
they
you got to
had to
have
go with
somebody from
one of,
Vision.
yeah.
Yep.
Well, the only two guys left were Americano and Jay, so you had to get Jay to win to then take Jay out storyline on Friday. So there was a lot of chess that had to be done here in order to get somebody from the Vision in that match so that Seth Rollins could make his big return.
Yep.
Do you think this means that it's Seth versus Logan out of necessity at Mania, unless, or do you think that because I hear that Bron Breakker is rehabbing like a maniac,
Right.
do you think he
I'm not
manages to come
sure.
back in time?
I'm not sure how long it takes to rehab from a hernia surgery, but I think that would be the money match. I,
I
you know,
do. Yep, I agree.
but I don't
Paul's the
see.
backup match, maybe if it
Paul's got
doesn't
to be,
happen.
because I mean, it can't be a Austin Theory versus Seth Rollins. You might as well put Heyman in there.
I mean, you know that Logan would acquit himself well, and Seth
Oh
Rollins
yeah.
is such an amazing talent. That would probably be a good plan B. But here's my
Hmm.
hope, and again, part of us reviewing here is storyline booking people's paths to WrestleMania. I'd like to think that the freak athlete that Braun Breaker is comes
Hmm.
back and surprises Seth by being ready in time and takes that match. And Logan Paul is free to do something else. And I'm hoping that it's because he's planted the seeds for it. I know it would probably stir up the interest that WWE is looking for to move some of those tickets, but a true celebrity match of a Logan
Uh-huh.
Paul versus a Bad Bunny, come on.
I have said that for a few years now because they are both great talents. Paul, who lives in Puerto Rico, Bad Bunny, who's from Puerto Rico, and Bad Bunny's commented. I mean, there's real life beef there.
Yeah. And there's supposedly WWE reached out to Bunny's people and they said the conversations went well. That doesn't mean he's available, but especially with Bad Bunny so much in the headlines recently,
Hmm.
if you want a match that's not a title match, that's going to be a marquee match that people will tune into WrestleMania for, you say the, $16 million Pokemon guy versus the Super Bowl halftime performer. I mean, you're going to get some people that are going to watch, if they watch nothing else on this card, through their ESPN subscription. That actually is
Hmm.
a very, very tantalizing, different kind of match. That's one of those attraction matches, as they like to say in the business, that I think that this WrestleMania could very much use, and I hope it happens.
Or I guess the alternative is that maybe Rollins isn't 100%, but enough to wrestle, and maybe uh Bronson comes back and is not 100% either. Again, I'm not sure. Maybe he does some Steiner math there and figures out a way to turn 6 to 8 weeks or whatever it is into 10 days. But maybe we have a Logan Paul, or maybe we have a Vision, and then Rollins, instead of bringing these kids that are dressing up from his wrestling school in as the masked man, maybe he brings in Bad Bunny as his second,
Oh, ooh,
and
yeah, and have it
and
as
that
a
and that
tag to
way
give some.
you still got the, not that Bad Bunny needs the that crutch, but that might be the safer way to go.
I do like that there's some combination of that is likely to happen for Mania, and I think that that is actually a good path for a returning Seth Rollins who doesn't have a spot in a main event and doesn't have a spot in a title match. This is something meaningful for him to do, getting revenge, something meaningful for the Vision to do, and also a chance to get some work rate on the card if you're worried about some of the other matches, because Seth versus Paul could bring it. Paul versus Bad Bunny will be a spectacle that will outperform what anybody thinks could possibly happen with it. Braun
Hmm.
Breaker obviously is a beast, so there's a lot of good choices in this storyline. As
Yes.
long as everyone stays healthy, as long as people
Right.
can get there, right? Then we get further storyline that added to the messy overbooking of this match's end, and that was Drew McIntyre interferes, trying desperately to avoid facing Cody, which leads to Randy Orton ultimately winning by getting an RKO on Cody. I will say this was unexpected because I think we all thought that this was easily a Cody win. But based on the crowd reaction, unexpected doesn't necessarily mean it's what fans were happy and wanted to see. Those can be two different things. After the show, though, Doug, Nick Aldis, I don't know if you'd heard this or not because I didn't see the post
Uh,
show, but I read about it.
I didn't see the post show.
He angrily booked Drew to defend against Cody on SmackDown this week. Like if you're so determined you're not
Mm,
going to face Cody Rhodes, you're getting Cody Rhodes. You have to defend the title, which makes me think that this what at the end of this show you think it's going to be Drew versus Orton. I never thought that was the end game. Even in the moment, I thought no.
uh-huh.
Based on the way this has gone down, they're going to turn it into a multi-person match. I still think that's the way they're going. I do believe that both Cody and Jacob Fatu have legitimate,
Yes.
like Drew is getting involved in people's business to avoid us.
Hmm.
I see it as a four-way.
That's
But
exactly what I was thinking. A four-way
now
with
that we
Cody.
now that we know that they're doing this match, another way to shuffle things around if they really are concerned about let's get some fresher matches on a Mania card, you could go ahead and let Cody win on Friday. You could have him do something heelish to win on Friday. And if you had Cody versus Orton, the old friends, the big
Hmm.
names facing off, and then maybe Drew and Fatu finishing their business at Mania in more of a grudge match or a Hell in a Cell or whatever violent spectacle you want to do with them, you could get two more There's multiple ways they could go with
Yeah.
this. I do not believe, and I would bet all my money that it's not Drew Orton at Mania. That is not the final match the way that it would seem right now. Do
Hmm.
you agree?
I do agree with that because I think that's fresh, but I'm not sure that's a WrestleMania match. Nothing
Yeah.
against those two, but yeah. Although I do see it going more of like a four-way at the end of the day. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but that's just the vibes I'm getting of where that's going. And I do think that Cody learns a valuable lesson in heelish behavior from getting that RKO right off of the crossroads
So you
with
think in a
Drew.
four-person match, there's more opportunity for Cody to do something underhanded to like take advantage of a
I
moment.
I think, on the way to WrestleMania, coming off that RKO he took off of Randy is the perfect time to, for him, for that light bulb to go off and for him to start leaning more towards heel tendencies until we get to full Homelander by, WrestleMania. And then maybe by WrestleMania, we have, three other contenders saying, hey, assuming that Cody does take the belt this week on SmackDown, which I could see that happening too.
I'm of two minds about like the ultimate direction of all of this. On the one hand, I'm not the. I mean, I can enjoy them, but when it comes to Mania and title matches, I prefer one-on-one contests. So I don't, in
Yes.
general, like the concept of a multi-person match. Um, on the other hand, I kind of would hate to see Drew McIntyre get pushed out of it if it were to go the other
Hmm.
way, because the only main event he ever had was without a
Yeah.
crowd, and Drew
Hmm.
has earned it. So, I think I can be fine with whatever direction they end up going here. You just need to get me a little excited about it, and just a straight up Drew Orton match. I don't know is it, but we'll see where they
Hmm.
go. I don't think that's the one that's happening either, though. I'm with you.
Yeah.
As for this particular match itself, I would say it was passable, but certainly on the low end of past chamber matches.
Hmm.
And I think a lot of that was because the biggest parts of this match was the Seth reveal and the Orton swerve ending where you didn't get the victor you thought. And I don't know that, even though those were both well done, it's not always a great sign when those things actually overshadow the match itself. And I think they did.
Hmm.
Kind of made it an overbooked match. I would say overall, a bit of a shaky pay per view. It started out strong,
Yeah.
and then to be the last PLE before Mania, I don't know that it was what anybody had wanted.
Yeah. I'm with you.
And with that, we are on the road to WrestleMania, but we're on the road to our big finish first to bring it home. First time watching the show, we do the one, two, three, the botch, the performance, and the match of the week. Doug, I will start with the botch if you don't mind.
Go right ahead.
It isn't related to this pay per view, but
Yeah.
Vince McMahon is my botch for two news stories that I didn't put in the news this week. First is Jonathan Coachman claiming he has a well placed source who says undoubtedly Vince is quietly exploring his opportunities to buy back WWE with the backing of Saudi Arabia, using Saudi Arabia's money. The way Coach tells it, it would be totally Saudi Arabia's money that would get it back from TKO. Vince would just be more of a silent partner and not have that same presence that he had previously. To that, I say boo. Boo to that. And then boo also to Vince behind the wheel, as this week we saw the release of body cam footage of the incident from, we already knew the incident back in July. We reported on it. We all knew what happened. It pretty much, rich guy gets a slap on the wrist, pays $1,000 so that he doesn't have anything go on his permanent record. And, on paper, that sounds bad enough. But then you see this video footage that comes out this week. Doug, there is no way in the world you or I would not be sitting in a jail cell right now had we just been doing 115 miles an hour, slammed into the back of somebody, and then start rattling on, cussing at ourselves like we're Robert Durst on the Jinx or something. Like, what in the world was that?
That was a crazy rich man, Kevin. That's what that was.
His excuse is my granddaughter's got a birthday and I don't drive myself very often. And then suddenly like half of Stanford shows up to start like trying to circle around Vince to protect him, and everyone, what's your relation to him? He's my friend. You're sitting there calling him Mr. McMahon, not Vince. This was life imitating art, is what this was. It just was very, very weird.
Vince.
Doug, how about you?
Vince is an excellent driver. Excellent driver.
So, I know you enjoy your time together. I didn't mean to talk bad about it.
So I want to keep it in the pay-per-view like I always do, and like I probably, hinted maybe too strongly with earlier. Danhausen's debut was a botch, but not because of Danhausen, because of the way it was executed and really when it was executed. That was not Order 66, but it should have been. But so it was... I mean, some vignettes or something, but considering his contract didn't end until like Friday night, it's So surely there was no discussions before his contract ended.
They just happen to have a box.
They just happen to have a box that they've been teasing for like a month, but whatever. I mean, it could have been done so much better, and maybe someplace better too. But we got what we got. And, I think he'll make a great R-Truth or Mr. Iguana type character. He'll move a lot of merchandise, and I think he will make a lot of money while he's there. So good for him. But, that's a very shaky start.
For someone of Danhausen's character, just what it is that Danhausen brings to the table, he is not your world champion. He is comic relief. He is unusual. He is a merch seller, and for what his talents are, and they are many, WWE is the right place for him to maximize his earning potential for sure, selling all that merch that no one else could provide that platform for him. I just hope they don't mess it up based on step one.
I just want to see that entrance continue. Not necessarily the coffin, but the dancing girls and all that down to the ring. That's got to stay, man. That's got to stay.
How about your performance of the week?
So, you know what? I'll catch heat for this, but, I think they did a really good job of Logan Paul looking really, really strong. And I've got to say, Paul is, as I've said before, annoyingly athletic and just annoyingly good at his job to be Logan Paul. So I'm gonna give him his flowers this week because he's good at what he does. I know maybe I'm secretly a Logan Paul fanboy and just afraid to admit it, but kid's good.
I'm not giving you heat, man. You said it earlier. This crowd wasn't your typical Chicago crowd, but one thing they did react to, and that was the heel. How many heels can actually get heel heat these days?
Yes.
Like I said, Trick Williams is getting people chanting, "Whoop that trick." He's over like gangbusters, but they like him. They don't hate him. They hate Logan Paul, and he's good at that. He's just good at that. You're not wrong. My performance of the week, I'm going to go back a few days from the pay per view and just say the whole thing surrounding AJ Styles. I thought um, when you saw him retire in Saudi Arabia, I thought one, does it have to end so soon, and does it have to end there? Like but bring him back to do the tribute they did, to have him leave his gear in an Atlanta ring, and then to have the genuine surprise, because you could
Hmm.
tell AJ was genuinely like surprised, did not
Uh-huh.
see coming what was happening with the Hall of Fame induction and everything. I like Stephanie. I think that Stephanie is someone who's probably done more for women's wrestling than and for wrestling in general than maybe any other female in the history of the business. She definitely deserves it, but I think you need an in-ring performer, or at least a
Hmm.
co-headliner to be, an in-ring
Yeah.
performer for a Hall of Fame. Stephanie is the centerpiece of the Hall of Fame. Did not do it for me. Now I think that it feels like, okay, now you
Yes.
can build around these
Now we've
two.
got somebody. Yeah.
Now we've got somebody. AJ is perfect.
I don't know how much truth there is to this, but did you hear all the rumbling about how, of course, it was a surprise for AJ? He did not see it coming, legit, but it was a shrewd move to keep him out of AEW because now they extend that contract, they keep him around through WrestleMania, when he could have went right to AEW. Of course, I think he was on the oh gosh, Gallows and Anderson podcast. I don't know what it's called, but he's like, look, my plan was always to stick with WWE, just retire from the ring. So,
Yeah, I think that who better to be, I mean, it's not a far jaunt from his home in Georgia down to the Performance Center in Florida.
hmm,
Uh, who better could Shawn Michaels have on his staff shaping
right?
kids down at, of ID talent or Performance Center talent? Yeah, I think he's WWE for, well, as long as he wants to be.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
How about your match of the week? We
So,
may be in agreement on this one.
because I like to smush these things into the pay per view, I've got to stick with that. And for me, this is kind of hard. There's part of me that wants to call it that Punk Balor, and then there's part of me that wants to go with like the nice swerves and surprises and everything, and in that men's elimination chamber too. So at the end of the day, I think I'm going to go with Punk Balor because I really like the way that Balor got put over in that match. Punk got busted open the hard way. Not that I'm cheering that, like,
Yeah.
yay, Punk got busted open the hard way. There's hard color there. Not that, but it just, I'm going to go with that match, the Punk Balor match.
I'm sticking with Elimination Chamber also, but I'm going with the first match of the night. I feel
Okay.
like the women outperformed the men, which they often do. I thought the women's
Yeah,
match
they
was a
do.
better chamber match than the men's match. It also was such a good start. I thought if they keep going up from here, it's going to be a great pay per view. And instead, to me, that was the highlight of the night.
Mm,
They stole the show, and Rhea was the right winner. And her versus Jade, I think she could get the most out of Jade of just about anyone
right.
this side of an EO Sky. So that all I thought was well done. Match of the week. Go see that. If you see a couple matches, Doug and I just saved you half a time of pay per view if you
There you
just go
go.
ahead and watch those two.
There you go.
And with that, we have come to the end of another episode of the Two Bros Wrestling Show. As you can see from our upcoming shows, we are in the busy PPV or PLE, whichever you prefer, season. So before we get into All Mania all the time, we do have some AEW business to attend to. We'll have a preview of Revolution on our next show. We'll be off the following week because that is the night of Revolution, and we don't want to compete. And then we're back to reviewing it, and then we're going to go into some more thematic stuff as we head into the deep waters of WrestleMania season. And we hope that you join us all the way.
Absolutely. Until then, go watch some wrestling. That's what I say, right? I still say that.
I have been saying it for you every week,
Okay.
so I'm
Thank
glad
you.
that you're here to say it. See you, folks.
See ya.